Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're tackling essentialism, based on Greg McKeown's book, Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less.
Yeah, this is a great one. I think a lot of people struggle with information overload and feeling overcommitted these days.
Exactly, and it can be tough to figure out how to prioritize what truly matters.
Right, and that's where McKeown's book comes in. He provides a really practical framework for discerning the vital few from the trivial many, so you can focus your time and energy on what really moves the needle.
I like that. So it's about making those tough choices and figuring out what to eliminate, so we can truly excel in those key areas.
Absolutely. He starts by talking about the paradox of success.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. What's the paradox there?
Well, it's like this. We often think that success will bring us more freedom and happiness.
Right, makes sense.
But McKeown argues that initial success can actually lead to diffused efforts and ultimately less fulfillment.
I can see how that could happen. You achieve a certain level of success, and then suddenly you're inundated with opportunities and requests.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it becomes tempting to say yes to everything.
To try to keep all those doors open.
Right. Which McKeown calls the straddled strategy. We end up trying to do it all and spreading ourselves too thin.
So instead of achieving greater success, we actually end up compromising our ability to make a real impact in any one area.
Exactly.
Hmm.
He shares a pretty striking anecdote to illustrate this point.
Oh, I'm all ears. Let's hear it.
He talks about attending a client meeting while his wife was in labor.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah, it really highlights how saying yes just to please others can actually damage our integrity and even the relationships we're trying to protect.
That's a powerful lesson. I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling of pressure to say yes, even when we're already stretched too thin.
Right. It's about recognizing that our time and energy are finite resources, and we need to be intentional about how we invest them.
So it's not just about doing less, but about choosing carefully what we do say yes to.
Exactly. McKeown argues that true freedom and clarity come from aligning our actions with our values, even if it means saying no to seemingly good opportunities.
I love that. That's really empowering.
He even shares his own experience of dropping out of law school to pursue his passion as an example.
That takes guts. I can see how that decision would have required a lot of clarity and commitment.
It's about recognizing what's truly essential for you and having the courage to pursue it, even if it goes against conventional wisdom.
So we need to figure out what our own essential intent is.
Right, that sort of guiding principle that informs our decisions.
Yeah.
And one of the core principles of essentialism that helps with that is the 80-20 rule.
Oh, the Pareto principle. I've definitely heard of that one.
Yeah, it suggests that 80% of our results come from just 20% of our efforts.
So a huge chunk of what we do might not be actually moving the needle.
Exactly. McKeown challenges us to identify and focus on those essential few activities that will generate the most significant impact.
It's like figuring out where to get the biggest bang for our buck in terms of time and energy.
Precisely.
Yeah.
He uses some compelling examples to illustrate this, like Warren Buffett's incredibly selective investment strategy.
Oh, right. He only invests in a handful of companies that he believes in deeply,
And then there's the quality revolution in Japan.
where companies like Toyota honed in on perfecting a few key processes.
Exactly, which led to massive improvements in quality and efficiency.
So this principle isn't just about work. It applies to all areas of our lives.
Absolutely. Think about your personal commitments, your relationships, even your hobbies.
Where are you spreading yourself too thin? Could you achieve greater fulfillment by focusing on the essential few?
That's the question McKeown wants us to ask ourselves.
Knowing that only 20% of our efforts drive 80% of our results forces us to make tough choices about where we invest our energy.
And that's where trade-offs come
Yeah,
in.
essentialists embrace trade-offs as an inherent part of life.
They understand that achieving what truly matters often requires saying no to other things, even good things.
It's recognizing we can't do it all.
And that's okay.
McKeown uses a great example to illustrate this.
Oh, which one?
Southwest Airlines.
Ah, yes. The airline that does things differently.
Exactly. They deliberately chose a low-cost strategy.
No assigned seating, no meals, point-to-point flights only.
Right. And those specific trade-offs allowed them to operate with incredible efficiency.
And become one of the most profitable airlines in the world.
It's a classic example of strategic clarity. They knew exactly what they were,
And just as importantly, what they were not,
which allowed them to make those tough decisions and stick to their strategy.
even when faced with pressure to do otherwise.
McKeown contrasts this with Continental Airlines.
Oh yeah, Continental tried to have it both ways with their Continental Light service.
Right. They tried to mimic Southwest's low-cost model.
But didn't fully commit to the necessary trade-offs.
The result, they ended up compromising on service and ultimately failed.
Their story underscores the importance of having a clear, essential intent,
That guiding principle that informs every decision.
especially in high-stakes situations.
And speaking of high-stakes situations, McKeown uses a fascinating case study, the Johnson & Johnson Tylenol cyanide scandal of 1982.
Oh, wow. Now that's a story with some serious weight behind it.
So what happened?
Well, in the face of immense pressure,
I can only imagine.
Johnson & Johnson's deeply ingrained credo, their statement of values, guided their actions.
Even though they were facing a potential PR nightmare and financial losses.
Exactly. They prioritized customer safety above all else.
So what did they do?
They pulled Tylenol off the shelves nationwide,
Wow, taking a massive hit.
but ultimately demonstrating a commitment to their essential intent.
That's incredible. It's like they chose integrity over short-term profits.
And it ultimately paid off. They regained public trust and emerged even stronger.
So in moments of crisis, your essential intent, your core values, should guide your actions.
Even when it's tempting to compromise.
But how do we figure out what our essential intent is in the first place? It seems like it can be tough to even carve out the time and mental space to think about it.
You're right about that. McKeown stresses the importance of creating space for exploration and deep thought.
Stepping back from the daily whirlwind to reflect on what truly matters.
He gives the example of Bill Gates' famous Think Week,
Oh, right, where he isolates himself to read and reflect.
allowing for that deeper level of thinking.
It's interesting how even someone as busy as Bill Gates recognizes the need to create that space for reflection.
Exactly. It's about prioritizing thinking time, just as you would prioritize any other important meeting or activity.
McKeown also talks about becoming a journalist of your own life.
Oh, I love that analogy.
What does that even mean?
It's about asking the right questions to cut through the noise and identify what's truly essential.
Like a journalist sifting through mountains of information to find the key story.
Exactly. What resonates with you? What are the underlying patterns and connections in your experiences?
It's about looking for that key point, the thing that connects all the dots.
McKeown shares a great anecdote from writer Nora Ephron
Oh yeah, I love her work.
about learning to identify the lead story in journalism.
As a metaphor for finding the essential in any situation.
Exactly. It's about training yourself to spot the headline in your own life.
To find the signal in all the noise.
He offers some practical techniques for doing this.
Like keeping a journal.
Yeah, to capture essential ideas
Yeah.
and then reviewing those notes to gain clarity.
So often we're on autopilot, just going through the motions.
This is a call to be more intentional, more discerning about where we focus our energy.
And sometimes the most essential thing is to simply rest.
You're right. McKeown dedicates a whole chapter to the importance of sleep.
Which might seem counterintuitive in a book about productivity.
I know, right? But he makes a compelling case.
I'm curious to hear more about the sleep connection. It does feel like something we sacrifice in the pursuit of doing more.
Definitely, McKeown draws on research that shows how crucial sleep is for peak performance.
Oh, like how it affects our cognitive abilities and decision-making?
He highlights a study of elite violinists.
Elite violinists. How does sleep tie into that?
Well, the top performers slept an hour longer than their good but not great counterparts.
Wow, really? Just an hour?
And they also napped more.
I wouldn't have guessed that more sleep could be the differentiator between good and great.
The researchers concluded that this extra rest allowed the best violinists to practice with greater concentration.
And make faster progress.
Exactly. It underscores the importance of protecting our most valuable asset, our health and well-being.
He also tells a pretty sobering story about Jeff, a high-achieving CEO.
Oh, right. The one who ignored his need for sleep and pushed himself to the limit.
Until his health deteriorated.
And he had to step down from his role to focus on recovery.
It's a cautionary tale.
We might think we can power through exhaustion.
But it always catches up to us.
Sometimes the most essential thing is to simply rest and recharge.
So we've talked about choosing carefully, eliminating the non-essential, and protecting our time and energy.
Right. It's about recognizing our limits and making sure we're taking care of ourselves.
So what other key principles of essentialism should we explore?
McKeown introduces a really helpful decision-making tool, Derek Sivers' Hell Yeah, or No method.
Hell yeah. Or no. Okay, that sounds pretty extreme, but I'm guessing there's wisdom behind it.
It's incredibly simple but powerful.
So how does it work?
The idea is that you should only say yes to opportunities that elicit a full-bodied hell yeah from you.
So anything less gets a no.
Exactly. It's about reserving our time and energy for the things that truly excite us.
That makes sense. But how realistic is it to say, hell yeah, to everything? What if we have obligations we can't just drop?
It's not about saying no to everything, but about being more discerning with our yeses.
So it's not about being a jerk. It's about recognizing that we have limited time and energy.
Exactly. We need
Yeah.
to invest it wisely.
I can see how that aligns with the 80-20 rule we talked about earlier.
Right. If we're saying yes to too many things, we're diluting our focus and diminishing our impact on the things that truly matter.
So the hell yeah or no method is really about helping us stay aligned with our essential intent.
Exactly. It's about making choices that are truly in line with our values and goals.
McKeown gives some examples of companies that use this approach.
Like Vitso and Basecamp.
They're known for being incredibly selective about who they hire.
They use rigorous processes to find people who are a hell yeah fit.
Basecamp even considers whether a potential hire could have been a founding member of the team.
That's a pretty high bar. But it shows their commitment to only bringing in people who truly align with their values.
And sometimes being discerning means making the tough decision to uncommit from things we've already invested time and energy in.
Oh, that's where sunk cost bias comes in.
The tendency to cling to losing propositions just because we've already put so much into them.
It's like that old saying, throwing good money after bad.
So how do we overcome that bias?
It's not easy, but McKeown offers some helpful techniques.
Like what?
One is to ask ourselves, if I didn't already own this, how much would I pay to buy it?
That's an interesting way to look at it.
It forces us to reevaluate our commitment based on its current value, not just our past investment.
So we can apply that to opportunities, commitments, even relationships.
Exactly. If the answer isn't a resounding, hell yeah, it might be time to reevaluate.
That's a great reminder.
Another powerful technique is to run a reverse pilot.
A reverse pilot. What's that?
It involves temporarily removing an initiative or activity to see what impact it has.
So instead of agonizing over whether to give something up, we can just try taking it away for a while and see what happens.
Exactly. It's a low-risk way to test whether something is truly essential.
Or can be safely eliminated.
Right. It's about being willing to experiment and challenge our assumptions about what's truly necessary.
So we've talked about choosing carefully eliminating the non-essential and even the power of uncommitting,
Yeah. It's all about creating space for what truly matters.
which seems like it would naturally lead to the need for setting boundaries.
Absolutely. McKeown emphasizes the importance of setting clear boundaries to protect our focus.
And prevent others from hijacking our priorities.
Right. He tells a great story about Jin Young, a woman who surprised her colleagues by saying no to an additional project.
Right before her wedding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a bold move, but it sent a powerful message.
So what happened?
Interestingly, her refusal to overextend herself actually inspired others on the team to set boundaries as well.
Wow, so it had a ripple effect.
It created a healthier work environment overall.
That's a great example of how our actions can influence those around us.
It's like giving others permission to prioritize their well-being as well.
So often we feel like we have to say yes to everything, especially at work.
But setting boundaries is essential for protecting our time and energy so we can focus on what truly matters,
But setting those boundaries often means having to say no.
which can be difficult, especially when we're trying to be helpful and agreeable.
McKeown offers some advice on how to say no gracefully.
He stresses that it's not about being negative or dismissive,
It's about being selective with our yeses.
so we can fully commit to what truly matters.
And to support those commitments, he advocates for the power of buffer. Buffer, like a buffer zone to protect our time and energy.
Exactly. He uses a great analogy of a scout leader leading a group of boys on a hike.
Okay, I'm picturing this. What happens on the hike?
The leader's goal is to get everyone to the campsite before sunset.
But I'm guessing it doesn't go exactly as planned.
Right, the varying paces of the boys create a huge gap between the fastest and slowest.
So he has to constantly adjust his pace and plan to accommodate the slowest hiker.
Exactly, which makes the whole journey more challenging.
So what's the takeaway here? Do we need to leave the slowest hikers behind?
Not at all. The takeaway is that life rarely goes according to plan.
Right, there are always unexpected delays and obstacles.
And if we don't build in buffer, we'll constantly be playing catch-up.
Sacrificing quality and increasing our stress.
So it's about being proactive, not reactive.
So how do we create this buffer in our own lives?
McKeown suggests some practical techniques.
Like adding extra time to our estimates for tasks.
Exactly. He recommends adding 50% to be safe.
Wow, that seems like a lot. But I can see how it would be helpful.
It gives us that margin of safety to handle those inevitable curveballs.
It's like that saying, expect the best, but prepare for the worst.
Exactly. We need to be realistic about how much we can actually accomplish in a given day.
So we've got boundaries and buffers in place. What else can we do to support our efforts to become more essentialist?
McKeown then dives into the concept of effortless execution,
Effortless execution. That sounds like a dream.
right? It's about making progress feel almost automatic.
But how do we achieve that?
He emphasizes the importance of starting small to build momentum.
So instead of trying to make a huge leap all at once,
We focus on taking small, consistent steps.
he gives the example of the Richmond Police Department's Positive Tickets program.
Oh yeah, that's a great story.
I love how they flipped the script and focused on rewarding positive behavior.
Instead of just punishing negative behavior.
So tell me more about this program. How did it work?
Instead of focusing on catching wrongdoers,
Right, like giving speeding tickets?
officers started rewarding young people for positive behavior.
Like what?
Things like wearing bike helmets or simply being on time for school.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like they were catching kids doing something good.
Exactly. And it had a remarkable impact.
What kind of impact?
This seemingly small shift in focus actually led to a significant decrease in recidivism rates.
So by focusing on the positive, they actually created a more positive outcome.
It's a great example of how small changes can have a ripple effect.
This ties into McKeown's idea of starting small to build momentum.
Right. Instead of striving for those big flashy wins that don't really matter.
We should focus on pursuing small and simple wins in areas that are essential.
Exactly. It's about celebrating those small wins along the way.
I think that's something a lot of us struggle with. We're so focused on the end goal that we forget to acknowledge and celebrate the progress we're making along the way.
Right. But those small wins are what keep us motivated and help us stay on track.
So how do we make sure we're celebrating those small wins?
McKeown suggests using visual aids to track our progress.
Oh, like those fundraising thermometers they used to have in schools?
Exactly. As the level rose, it created excitement and motivated people to contribute more.
We can apply that same principle to our own goals.
Using visual aids to reinforce our commitment.
I love that. It's like giving ourselves a visual reminder of how far we've come.
And how much closer we are to achieving our goals.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Choice, the 80-20 rule trade-offs, creating space, the journalist analogy, sleep extreme criteria, uncommitting boundaries, buffer, starting small.
Wow, that's a lot.
And I feel like we're just scratching the surface of essentialism.
You're right. It's a rich and nuanced philosophy.
But I think we've laid a solid foundation.
Definitely. We've explored some of the key principles and strategies.
And hopefully given our listeners some food for thought.
And some practical tools to start implementing these ideas in their own lives.
So what's next?
Well, I think it's time to take a break.
Oh, well-deserved break.
And then we'll come back and dive into even more practical strategies for implementing essentialism.
In part 2 of our deep dive.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Until then, stay essential.
And keep exploring what truly matters. Welcome back to our deep dive into essentialism. We left off talking about the importance of living in the now and being fully present.
Yeah, it's such a powerful concept, but it can be really challenging in practice.
You're telling me. Our minds are constantly pulled in a million directions.
So how do we cultivate that present moment awareness? What does McKeown suggest?
Well, he starts by emphasizing the importance of focusing on one thing at a time.
Which brings to mind the whole multitasking debate. Is it even possible? Or is it just a myth?
McKeown actually differentiates between multitasking and multifocusing.
Okay, I'm listening.
True multitasking, like focusing effectively on multiple complex tasks simultaneously, is pretty much a myth.
Yeah, our brains just aren't wired for it.
Exactly. What we call multitasking is really just rapidly switching between tasks.
Which can actually decrease our efficiency and increase errors.
He gives the example of running into a former classmate who was constantly checking his phone and responding to texts mid-conversation.
Oh man, I've been there.
It was impossible to have a meaningful exchange.
Right. It's so frustrating when you're trying to connect with someone and they're clearly not present.
It's like we become so accustomed to being constantly connected that we've lost the ability to truly focus.
So how do we combat this? How do we reclaim our attention and direct it towards what's truly essential?
McKeown suggests a deceptively simple technique.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's hear it.
Ask yourself, what is most important right now?
It sounds so simple, but I can see how it would be powerful.
It's a way to cut through the mental clutter and recenter yourself on your priorities.
Like hitting the reset button.
Exactly. He tells a story about feeling overwhelmed after giving a presentation.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. He was feeling pulled in all directions.
And he just stopped, took a breath, and asked himself that very question, what's important now?
And what was the answer?
In that moment, the most important thing was simply to figure out what was actually important.
Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most profound.
It's a great reminder to pause amidst the chaos and reconnect with our priorities.
So we need to get better at asking ourselves, what's important now?
And another technique is to get the future out of our heads.
Oh man, that's a big one for me. I'm constantly worrying about deadlines or planning future events.
It's exhausting, right? All that mental clutter distracts us from being present.
So how do we deal with that future overwhelm?
McKeown recommends creating a someday maybe list.
A someday maybe list, what's that?
It's basically a place to capture all those future ideas and to-dos so they're not constantly swirling around in your mind,
It's like giving your mind permission to let go.
knowing that those ideas are safely stored away for later consideration.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm definitely going to try that. It's like decluttering your mind.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
frees you up to focus on what's truly important right now.
So we've talked about asking what's important now and getting the future out of our heads. Any other techniques for staying present?
McKeown also highlights the importance of scheduling time for play and exploration.
Play. I thought we were talking about essentialism.
I know it might seem counterintuitive, but McKeown reminds us that play isn't just for children. It's essential for adults too.
I've never thought of it that way.
Play fosters creativity, reduces stress, helps us connect with our sense of wonder and curiosity.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection.
Think about some of the most innovative companies. Google, Pixar, IDEO. They all have cultures that encourage playfulness and experimentation.
That makes sense. When we're relaxed and having fun, our minds are more open to new possibilities.
Exactly. It's like giving our brains a break from all the serious stuff.
So play isn't just about having fun. It's actually a key ingredient for innovation and creativity.
Right. And play doesn't have to be complicated. It could be as simple as taking a walk in nature, listening to music, spending time with loved ones.
The key is to engage in activities that bring you joy and allow you to recharge.
Exactly. It's about making sure you're incorporating those activities into your life on a regular basis.
So we need to be more intentional about scheduling time for play, just like we would schedule any other important meeting or task.
And remember, it's not selfish to take care of yourself.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. When you're feeling refreshed and energized, you're better able to show up fully for the things that truly matter.
This all circles back to the idea of making conscious choices about how we spend our time and energy.
So often we just go through the motions without really thinking about what we're doing or why we're doing it.
We're on autopilot.
Exactly. And that's when we end up feeling overwhelmed and unfulfilled.
McKeown challenges us to wake up and start living more deliberately.
To become the editors of our own lives.
I love that. So instead of just reacting to whatever comes our way
We can proactively choose what we want to focus on.
and what we want to let go of.
It's about creating a life that is truly aligned with our values and our essential intent.
This has been a really thought-provoking conversation.
I agree. I think McKeown's book offers a powerful framework for living a more intentional and fulfilling life.
And it's not just about theory. It's about practical strategies that we can all implement in our own lives.
Starting today.
So what's one small step our listeners can take right now to become more of an essentialist?
I would say start by asking yourself that simple but profound question. What is most important right now?
And then let that answer guide your actions.
Exactly. It's a small step, but it can make a big difference.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into essentialism
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
and with our listeners.
We'll be back soon with part 3, where we'll delve into even more practical strategies for implementing essentialism.
So stay tuned and keep exploring what truly matters. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into essentialism. It's been quite a journey exploring these powerful concepts.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, but now it's time to shift gears and focus on turning those ideas into action.
Right. It's all well and good to talk about essentialism in theory, but how do we actually implement these principles in our daily lives?
That's the million-dollar question. And McKeown doesn't disappoint. He provides a wealth of practical strategies throughout the book.
So let's dive into some of those strategies. What are some of the key takeaways that our listeners can start applying today?
Well, one of the most important is to clarify your essential intent.
In every area of your life.
Exactly. It's about identifying that overarching goal, that North Star that guides your decisions.
So it's not just about having a vague mission statement.
Right. It needs to be concrete and measurable, something you can actually track and measure progress towards.
McKeown uses a great example to illustrate this point, Brad Pitt's Make It Right organization.
Ah, yes. Their essential intent was to build 150 affordable green storm-resistant homes for families in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina.
That's such a specific and tangible goal.
And it was far more inspiring and actionable than a vague mission statement like eliminating poverty.
Right. It's much easier to rally people around a clear and concrete objective.
Exactly. And once you've clarified your essential intent, McKeown encourages you to explore and evaluate different options.
Before committing to a course of action.
Right. He poses a thought-provoking question. What problem do I want?
That's an interesting way to frame it.
Instead of just accepting the problems that are presented to you.
Right, like just reacting to whatever's in front of you.
Exactly.
Mm.
He challenges us to think bigger, to be more proactive in shaping our own path.
It's like that old saying, don't just play the hand you're dealt, create a better hand.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership and being intentional about the problems we choose to solve.
That reminds me of the Southwest Airlines story we talked about earlier. They didn't just try to solve the problem of air travel, they redefined the problem they wanted to solve.
By focusing on point-to-point flights and offering lower fares.
Right. They created their own niche instead of just trying to compete with the big guys.
And once you've made a choice, McKeown encourages you to edit ruthlessly.
Edit. What does he mean by that?
It's about eliminating any activities or commitments that don't directly support your essential intent.
So it's like decluttering your life, getting rid of all the excess baggage that's weighing you down.
Exactly. He compares it to the role of a film editor,
Oh, I like that analogy.
carefully selecting the best shots and scenes to create a compelling and coherent narrative,
So we need to become the editors of our own lives.
choosing what to keep and what to cut.
And remember, every time you say yes to a non-essential commitment,
You're saying no to something that might be truly important.
that's a powerful reminder.
It's about making sure that our actions are aligned with our priorities.
McKeown also reminds us that we don't have to make drastic changes overnight.
Right. It's not about trying to do everything all at once.
It's about taking small, consistent actions that compound over time.
He shares a great example of a weight loss program.
Oh yeah, the one that encouraged participants to start by simply walking around the block each day.
Exactly. It's such a simple but powerful concept.
Right. Sometimes we get so overwhelmed by the enormity of a goal that we don't even take the first step.
Exactly. But by focusing on a small, achievable goal,
We can establish a new habit and build momentum towards our larger goal,
and it's about celebrating those small wins along the way.
recognizing that progress, not perfection, is the key.
Exactly. And finally, McKeown encourages us to embrace the joy of missing out.
The joy of missing out. Now, that's a concept I need to hear more about.
It's about shifting our mindset from FOMO, fear of missing out.
To JOMO, the joy of missing out.
It's about recognizing that by saying no to the distractions and temptations,
We create space for the things that truly matter.
we give ourselves permission to fully embrace the extraordinary.
I love that. That's such a powerful reframe.
It's about choosing quality over quantity.
And recognizing that sometimes less is truly more.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive into essentialism,
What's one final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I would say this: essentialism is not a one-time fix. It's a journey.
It's an ongoing process of learning, experimenting, and refining our approach to life.
And it's a journey worth taking.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into essentialism. I hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as I did.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you and with our listeners.
And remember, the journey doesn't end here.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving to become more of an essentialist.
Until next time, stay essential.